I'm not gonna lie. Getting back into the Tiny and Mighty was tough. After both the Federation and the Alliance interdicted me trying to find my wingmate, I felt like there was a target on my back. Keegan had shown up moments after I got out of the fight with the Corvette. Maeve, what happened to your hull? I had to tell him the whole story over the comms about the Alliance and the Federation and the fight and the end result and the Corvette running. After a long pause, he wrote back, I guess I'll have to talk to the Alliance. I can't let the Federation catch me. I was a bit frustrated. Whatever he had gotten caught up in had almost killed me, but I was also worried about his safety. So I messaged back, will you be safe? He replied, I should be, and then he jumped out of the system, promising to fix it. Now, that wasn't the only thing that had me a bit on edge. After getting back to the dock, I'd found this little Indian food place that reminded me of home. Although, Mom, if you're listening to this, your tikka masala is still the best I've ever tasted, this place wasn't half bad. Sitting there by myself, I watched the causeway outside. It just relaxes me hearing the sounds of the busy station, people passing by on their way to home or work. I smiled seeing a gaggle of kids darting in between people's legs. My brothers and I had gotten into a lot of trouble for playing tag on the main thoroughfare, but no one really could catch us to punish us. An older couple walked arm in arm as faster passerbys split like water around a rock passing them. The two men leaning into each other seeming to fit like puzzle pieces. Then I caught neon green for a flash. Across the busy thoroughfare, I thought I saw the tattooed man's face, the one from the Pilots Federation space. But when I looked harder, he was gone. Or had he even been there? Was I just jumping at ghosts? I found a little hostel near the docks, full of pilots stopping over between shifts. The bunk I chose was in the corner. Slipping in quickly, I closed it off. Keeping my pistol near my pillow, I didn't even check my messages from home before sleep hit me. The next morning, I woke up pretty groggy. Confused for a minute, I looked around at the blank walls of the small space. Right, I had made it to a station last night. I tucked my pistol into my pocket of my sleep pants and opened the bunk. Sitting there, feet on the cold metal deck, I missed home so suddenly it was crippling. Come on, get back out there. I could hear my father's voice urging me on. He'd always subscribed to the, if we don't want to do it, then that meant we had to do it logic. Of course, he'd always been there beside me when I faced my fears. I made my way to the shared restroom, my bag slung over my shoulder, splashing water on my face and trying to wake up. Am I in over my head? The thought tugged at me, weighing me down. I brushed out my braid. Long, shiny black hair falling down my back, I sighed. Hi! A bright, chipper voice startled me. I turned to see a petite, delicate girl with a pixie cut of white blonde hair. She added some water to her hands and started running her fingers through her hair, spiking it up. You're an explorer, aren't you? No, I'm just a new pilot, I said, frowning. I've only had my wings for a week. No, you're definitely an explorer, she said, smiling. Before she vigorously brushed her teeth, somehow still talking. I can always guess from someone's profession. How about you? What are you doing here? I asked her as I carefully applied jasmine oil I'd brought from home into my hair, combing it through and then rebraiding it tightly. I'd found that stray hairs in 0G become an annoyance really quick. The young woman beamed at me. My grandmother is teaching me the family trade. Luna fell into step by my side as we exited the hostel. She didn't stop chatting, telling me all about her father and how he had tried to get her grandmother to retire, but Gran wasn't having any of it. I imagined a wizened old lady running a passenger liner, waving off a well-meaning son and scraping the paint off the hull as she navigated the mail slot. I know the best place for breakfast. Follow me. she said, cutting through a group of robed men and women. I apologized as I followed her. Then we were standing at the threshold of a petite bakery. The smell wafting out was divine, and my stomach growled. A striking woman waved at us. Her high cheekbones and sharp blue eyes resembled the young woman by my side, but she wasn't the wizened old woman I had pictured. Her shockingly white hair was cut short, one hand holding a mug of coffee, the other lightly resting on a pistol at her side. "Luna, who is your new friend?" She didn't seem surprised her granddaughter had someone in tow. Luna winked at me and then alighted in a seat across the table. "She's an explorer, Gran." Patting the seat next to her, I got the hint and sat down, leafing through the digital menu to place the order. "Ah, a seeker. What is it you're looking for out in the black?" the woman said casually, but I had the feeling this was a test. How did she know I was looking for something? I met her calculating stare, curious. "I'm looking for a friend's lost brother." "But, Luna, I'm not an explorer. I'm working up to buy a hauler. My family and everyone back at the home station need my help getting our goods off station." The granddaughter and grandmother shared a brief glance, and I felt I'd missed something. The woman paused, her eyes seeming to look through me. My breakfast arrived along with the biggest mug of coffee they had. "So what do you do?" I asked while stirring a hefty pour of sugar into my mug. "Gran is the best bounty hunter in the bubble," Luna smiled. "If you need someone tracked down, she can find them anywhere." "Really?" I looked at the woman across from me again. It fit. She hadn't seemed like a bus driver. "Do you take on missing persons cases?" Her eyes crinkled up and she laughed a hearty belly laugh. Taking a sip from her coffee, she caught her breath and looked out the window into the busy throng of people outside. "For the right price, I'll even bring them back to you alive." Luna laughed. "It's true. She charges extra if she has to deal with a hostage." I was perplexed, but not deterred. Well, it wouldn't be a hostage. It would be a passenger. "But, what is your rate?" Suddenly, all humor was gone. She sized me up again. "I charge extra for passengers. 100K for a black box, 200K for a living person. You only owe me when I deliver, but if you try and short me, you won't live long enough to realize your mistake." My eyes widened. Blueberry muffin halfway to my mouth? Then she winked. "But you seem like an honorable explorer, so you won't have to worry." "So you'll help me?" I said, thinking about how big of a dent it would make to my credits. But it was worth it. Shrimp's life is worth a temporary setback to my plans. A notification popped up and I glanced at the contract she had just sent me. Skimming through the fine print to ensure this wasn't some sort of shakedown or something, I signed my name at the bottom and said, "What's next?" Luna giggled. "Well, we find your friend, of course." Then she switched the topic to talk about her brother, who had thought he was a better bounty hunter than their grandmother, and then the time that Gran had taught him a lesson. I found myself really enjoying the pair's company. The effervescent younger bounty hunter and the stoic older woman's wry humor. We parted ways as they headed off to their crate Mark II. Its matte gray paint job would be hard to see in the black of space. I shivered. I'm glad I don't have any bounties that would attract their attention. As I wait in the queue to leave the station, I call Lioness. She answers voice only. "Do you have news?" The desperation and hope in her voice almost breaks my heart. "No news of Shrimp. However, I'm heading out to scan. I also hired a bounty hunter. I told her quickly, knowing it would crush her hope. Lioness sighed. Thanks, Maeve. Search and rescue just stopped looking. They said it's been more than 2 days and they can't dedicate the resources to it. BS, I said angrily. We'll find them ourselves. I'll do everything I can to help. Thank you, she said with a sniff. Gotta go. The line went dead. My mind was on the call and my mission to find Shrimp. Jumping to the system he was last seen in, maybe I needed to start from the beginning again. Scanning the nearby area looking for signals. Suddenly, I noticed something on the radar, a ship coming in quickly behind me. Oh no, not again, I thought as the interdiction locked. I was forced into a tunnel trying to escape. My little ship bucked and fought me as I tried to get out of the interdiction. Submitting was my only chance. I throttled down and got ready to boost and jump. No sooner had I dropped out, but my shields were down. Oh no, this wasn't going well. I watched the hull go down, and I put all pips into engines boosting, but I wasn't losing them. Then the power plant went offline. Time seemed to stretch. Red lights illuminated the emergency hatch. I got down on hands and knees, pulling frantically at the lever. I popped open the escape pod. I grabbed my bag, shoving it ahead of me into the narrow space below the dash. Wiggling in as quickly as I could, I just barely got my feet past the hatch when I was flung sideways in the small space. It was quiet. I expected a loud explosion, but the vacuum of space absorbs any noise. I felt sick as the escape pod flipped and spun and the force of the ejection. I was afraid to fire the stabilizers. If whoever had blown my ship up saw the light of the microthrusters, I might not live through this. Minutes stretched by as the pod got further and further away from where I'd started. If I didn't do anything, I'd keep hurtling on forever. Then a thought made me shiver. What if I was hurtling towards the star? I gritted my teeth, trying to stay conscious. Finally, when I couldn't take it any longer, I reached down to my side, feeling for the lever that would activate the automatic pod systems. My fingers slipped the first time. Cursing, I tried again and felt it give. A soft ping, ping, ping of the distress beacon started, and mercifully the pod slowed and stopped spinning. I felt myself get light as the G-forces of the spin stopped. Waiting for my attacker to close in on my signal and finish me off. They didn't. I floated in total darkness as the hiss of the thrusters making micro-adjustments steadying the pod. My bag floated free next to my shoulder, and I carefully reached up, only having about a foot of clearance on either side. I pulled out an emergency light and cracked it, letting it float and illuminate the coffin I was now in. Somehow that made my situation worse. I felt the panic rising, my helmet had closed, and I could hear myself breathing. As I used up the precious oxygen, the suit's scrubbers would only work so long before I slowly suffocate. Slow your breathing. I remembered my mom teaching me to meditate as a child. Clear your thoughts. I breathed in through my nose, slowly, exhaling, oh so slowly, feeling my lungs burning. A dozen breaths later, my heart rate slowed down, and I felt the panic ease a bit. Okay, so I'm near a star. That means my pod should be easy to find. A lot of ships go through this system every day, as I've seen. The only thing I can do now is try and take up less oxygen. So I went back to my breath. I must have drifted off because the sudden jolt and metal on metal screech jarred me awake. I suddenly was pushed against the roof. Bracing myself as I lay on my stomach, I could hear a whirring noise. Then a sudden change threw me to the side. With a thud, I heard the pod hit something. Had a piece of my ship hit my pod? Was there an air leak? I braced myself for the sudden decompression into space. And I waited. And I waited. Nothing happened. Then there was a sudden jolt, and I was weightless again. Then it happened. Pop! The pod opened, and I was blinded by light. Lifting my hands to shield my face from what could only be the star about to burn me alive with radiation, I heard a voice? It's okay, stay still for a minute. It's okay, stay still for a minute. A strong hand took mine and squeezed gently. I blinked rapidly, my eyes adjusting. I started to pick out silhouettes. The debris field looked oddly like a cargo bay of a ship. Cargo netting covered large containers that were trying to float in zero gravity of the ship. It's okay, you're safe, a deep voice said, and I focused in on the person holding me steady. I made an involuntary yeep as the tattooed face registered. My free hand grappled for my holstered pistol. You! I asked. Did you blow up my ship? No, I didn't. We don't have time. He gently pulled me up and out of the escape pod, lightly pulling me into his arms. I need to get you to a crash couch. My things, I said as he started to push towards the doorway. They aren't going anywhere. His voice rumbled through me as we slowly flew through space. With a click, his grav boots locked onto the deck right next to the exit. We're coming, he said over the comms. Get locked down, a voice came over the PA system. I had instinctually wrapped my arms around the tattooed man's neck. He moved faster, the momentum pressing us together. He elbowed a button, releasing a hatch. Moving quickly into a space, I saw it was some sort of personal quarters. He set me down in a grav couch. Buckle up. He pushed across the room and pulled out a panel with another grav chair. I fumbled with the straps, getting myself tightly fastened in just in time. The ship boosted and we were flattened into the gel. Then the FSD kicked in and we were suddenly weightless again. The ship shook as we hit witch space, then dropped out. The creak of scooping, then the ship jumped again. After a third jump, we seemed to be in Super Cruise. That was it. I grabbed my pistol and I brought it level with my captor's chest across the cabin. Who the hell are you? He raised his hands, not moving, his voice soft and calm. My name's Jensen. You're on board the vessel Emerald Seeker. How do I know you weren't the one to blow up my ship? I said, hands shaking a little as I kept the pistol trained on him. You don't? He lowered his hands slowly. His optical implants reflected the light glowing slightly. Why would we blow up your ship just to pick you up from your escape pod? I hesitated. It did seem to be a complicated way of kidnapping me. A boarding party would have been better for that. Also, my arms couldn't keep the pistol up much longer. Why are you following me? You caught my interest, he shrugged. I can't say more. It's not up to me, but maybe the captain can explain. Clicking the pistol back to my hip, I unclipped myself and pushed up on shaking legs, ready to leave the cabin. I slipped and started free-floating. His strong arms caught me and clicked us down onto the deck. You have to activate your boots. I said, embarrassed, and clicked on the magnetic feature. My legs tangled up in his as my boots sucked me down towards the floor. I looked up at the grin on his face, and I couldn't help laughing. But then I realized how close we were. He still had me hugged to him. I stepped back with a click. Sorry. It's okay. He gestured to the door, and I walked carefully out, following the signs pointing towards the bridge of the ship. As I came onto the bridge, I realized there was a familiar figure standing at a coffee machine, sipping from a mug. Wait. I turned just as Luna did a flip over the comms console and landed next to me. Hey, Maeve! She handed me a bottle of water. You sure found a heap of trouble, didn't ya? I stared around, wondering if I had gone totally crazy. Luna? I was surprised beyond words. We were on the trail of a good bounty, and imagine our surprise when we followed his wake and found your escape pod floating in the debris of a wrecked ship. He turned tail and ran the minute we deployed our hardpoints. Silly murder ho-ho, you can't run from Grand. Luna was talking a mile a minute. You just cost us a decent bounty, girl. The older woman's frosty voice cut her granddaughter off. Sorry? I said, feeling like I was missing something. Cultist? The Bravenists, a known cult of murder hobos. They believe sending commanders to their death is what their god wants. I could hear the sarcasm dripping off the tattooed man's words. You owe us, girl. The captain sat back down in her pilot seat. Luna filled in what her grandmother hadn't said. We'll drop you off at the next station with a shipyard. Until then, Jensen can show you the Emerald Seeker. Mia's spare suit might fit her, Luna said, looking at my torn and bloodied flight suit. Dismissed, came the captain's order as she pressed the throttle up a tick and made us grab for the nearest handlebars. Yes, ma'am. He stood at attention until she turned away, then motioned me back out. Luna started to follow, but a stern word from her captain snapped her back to her station. Once we were out of earshot, Jensen explained. Mia used to be on the crew. She crossed the captain. She isn't on the crew anymore. We passed a couple of other crew, busy checking and fixing things on the ship. They didn't take much note of me, a complete stranger walking around their ship. This must not be the first time that they've picked up someone out in the black. Jensen opened up a locker in the hallway, grabbing a bright red flight suit. He motioned for me to follow him. You can use my room to change. He pulled down a sink and handed me the suit. Just don't poke around my stuff, okay? I was totally at a loss for words. Everything was happening so quickly. He walked back out and closed the door, leaving me alone for the first time since I'd come out of the pod. I looked at myself in the polished metal behind the sink. My hair was stuck to my cheek from dried blood. My gray suit had burns and tears in it. When did that happen? I gingerly peeled off the tiny and mighty suit, feeling a pang of loss at losing the tiny sidewinder, wincing as a cut on my hand broke open. Oh no! I was going to get blood all over the room. I grabbed a rag or a shirt or something, and I wrapped my hand quickly. Luckily, the thermal wear I had under the suit was mostly intact. Pulling on the new suit over my feet, it was a little snug. I got it on, but I couldn't reach back around to activate the tabs that would seal it. Cold air from the vents prickled my back where it was still exposed. I wet the rag and cleaned off my face, trying to make myself presentable. Feeling somewhat human again, I exited the room. Jensen was leaning on the hallway outside the door and took a moment to scan me head to toe, his face unreadable. You need a hand. Before I could say anything, his fingers brushed the skin on my back as he tugged up the tab, sealing the suit. Red definitely suits you, he said, winking at me, and led the way to the crew cafeteria and common area. I found a trash chute to toss my suit into and followed him to a booth. He sat in on one side, strapping in before pulling up a holo chart. Looks like you'll be getting off soon. He showed me our approach to the station from the external cameras on the ship. Sliding in on the same side as him, I leaned in to catch the name of the station. Then I realized it was a bit rude and sat back, reaching down to strap in. This zero-gravity life was still new to me, and I kept forgetting things would float off, including myself. It was just in time again, because suddenly I was forced down into my seat as the ship flipped and boosted through the mail slot. Yeah, Gran definitely wasn't an old bus driver scraping on the light poles on her way to the dock. Then I felt a tug up as she dropped us onto the landing pad with a heavy thud that could be felt throughout the whole ship. This is your stop, Jensen said, reaching down, unclipping my harness. I suddenly felt my cheeks get hot. He was very close to me right now. You ready? Oh Oh shoot, I forgot we were both in a booth and I had to get out first. Feeling silly, I slid out, standing up, and in the 1G, it felt so nice after being on the float for so long. Jensen walked me back the way we had originally come to the cargo bay. The ramp was down, and I saw in the lights of the station the dented and damaged escape pod they had rescued me from. My bag was right where I'd left it, and I picked it up and hefted it over my shoulder. Jensen walked me to the end of the ramp. See you again soon. Try not to get blown up, okay? He waved at me as the ramp lifted back up. I stepped back as the thrusters started firing, ducking out of the way as the crate shot up and out the slot. A message was waiting in my inbox. Contract update. Locating Commander Shrimp. You owe us an extra $50K for the rescue. Captain Stella. My eyebrows lifted and I made a rude gesture at the departing ship. Thanks a lot.